Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The key turned in her hand, but the door didn't budge. She tried again, a little harder this time. Still locked. Still silent. Still mine. Upstairs, I stood barefoot, watching the front camera feed on my phone, like I was watching someone try to break into a stranger's house. Only it wasn't a stranger. It was my wife. She looked confused. A little irritated. She was wearing that beige coat she always said felt expensive on the inside. She clutched her purse in one hand, her phone in the other, probably still riding the high from that dinner. The one she claimed was just a client meeting. But I knew who he was. I knew what they ordered. I knew she laughed at his jokes. I knew she leaned in closer when she thought no one was watching. Because I was watching. 3 hours earlier, while she texted me a winking emoji, I was changing the locks. Not just on the door, but on the version of myself that used to wait for her to come home. That man was gone. He left the moment I stopped begging to be chosen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started packing her things into 3 categories. Things she'd miss. Things she wouldn't. Things she lied about keeping just for memories. When she finally called me, her voice came through the speaker with a laugh. "Curtis? Hey, the key's not working. Did you forget to tell me something?" She said it like we were still fine, like she still had the right to act surprised. I waited a few seconds, breathed in. Then I said the words I'd practiced all week. "No, Darla. I just remembered something you forgot to tell me." Then I ended the call and turned off the porch light. She stayed at the door longer than I expected. Most people would have left, but not Darla. She always hated not getting the last word. And the locked door was saying something louder than any argument we'd ever had. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching her silhouette shift back and forth behind the frosted glass. She knocked, then banged, then called again. This time, her voice wasn't lighthearted. It cracked with something closer to panic. "Curtis, open the door. I'm not in the mood for this. It's late." It wasn't late for her when she was sipping wine and laughing with him across a candlelit table. It wasn't late when she leaned in and touched his hand. Yes, I saw that too, Darla. I had followed her car from a safe distance. I didn't go into the restaurant, but I parked across the street and watched from my windshield. I watched her smile, the real one, the one she hadn't given me in months, maybe years. I watched her pretend like I didn't exist. And for once, she was right. While she was playing pretend, I was preparing for reality. I didn't just change the locks. I changed the codes on the garage and disabled her fingerprint access. I moved her personal files into a portable drive, left it in the box with her other things, and stacked it all in the hallway near the door. I even labeled it, because I know she hates when things aren't properly sorted. A strange part of me still cared enough to organize her chaos. How pathetic is that? From outside, her voice kept rising. "Are you serious right now? This is childish. I'm freezing." Funny, I thought. I'd been emotionally frozen for months and she didn't seem to mind. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Don't forget, my name's still on this house. I can call the cops, Curtis." I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror. Pale, hollow-eyed. The man who would have panicked at those words 6 months ago. The man who would have opened the door, apologized, and blamed himself for pushing her away. But that man was gone. I picked up the remote and turned off every light in the house, one by one. Porch light, hall light, upstairs lamps, darkness. Not for drama, just to make it clear this wasn't a standoff. It was done. Darla went quiet. For a full minute, there was nothing. No knocks, no yelling, just the faint hum of her car still idling in the driveway. Then my phone lit up with a single text. "Who told you?" She didn't deny it. Didn't ask, "What are you talking about?" Didn't even try to lie. Just jumped straight to the one thing that mattered to her. Who broke the illusion? I stared at that message for a long time. I could have said it was the friend who spotted her at the mall holding hands. I could have said it was the receipts I found. I could have said it was instinct. But instead, I typed just 3 words. "You did, eventually." Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds, the house felt different. It wasn't peaceful, not yet, but it was still. Like a storm had passed and left behind only silence and scattered wreckage. I didn't sleep much. My brain replayed everything. Her voice behind the door, her text, that ridiculous coat she wore like armor. But the worst part was how familiar it all felt. Betrayal wasn't sudden. It had been dripping into our marriage for years like a slow leak under the floorboards. I just hadn't wanted to look down. I made coffee. The mug she got me last Father's Day, world's okayest husband, was still in the cupboard. I nearly smashed it, but something stopped me. I placed it in the box with her other things. Let her decide what to do with that irony. At 7:32 a.m., her car pulled up again. I watched from the kitchen window. She got out slower this time, holding her phone, eyes scanning the house like she expected a trap. Maybe she thought I'd yell, or cry, or beg. But I was past that. I was past her. The doorbell rang, followed by a series of knocks. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted her to stew. She rang it again, knocked harder. "Curtis, I just want to talk." There it was, her soft voice, the one she used to use when she wanted something. I could almost feel my spine trying to fold again like it always did. But not this time. I opened the door slowly, not wide, just enough to see her standing there with messy hair and makeup smudged from the night before. She looked like someone who hadn't slept, which made two of us. Her eyes flicked behind me, scanning the hallway, maybe for signs of broken furniture or tears. She found neither. "I need to come inside," she said. I nodded slightly, then stepped to the side, just enough to show her the box still by the door. On top was a printed photo of her and him at the restaurant mid-laugh. I had taken it from my car window. It was blurry, but the expression on her face was sharp enough to cut through every excuse she was about to offer. She didn't reach for it. She didn't say a word. Just stood there frozen, like someone caught between two realities. The one where she was still in control and the one where she wasn't. "Did you change the locks because of this?" she asked finally, voice trembling. "No," I said. "I changed them because you stopped knocking on the door metaphorically months ago. Last night was just the first time it was literal." Her jaw tightened. "So what now? You're just kicking me out of my life?" I wanted to laugh. Not out of spite, but out of disbelief. She truly thought this was her life. Still hers. Still a stage she could return to like nothing happened. She never imagined I'd be the one with the final line. That's when the second car pulled into the driveway. Her face dropped. It was my sister, showing up early just like she promised in her text. She stepped out of the car carrying coffee, a set of spare clothes she had picked up for me from my old apartment, and that look of older sibling fire that said, "If she opens her mouth the wrong way, I'll handle it." Darla looked from her to me. "Oh, so you're doing this now? With an audience?" "No," I said. "I'm just finally living like someone who deserves to be seen." Then I closed the door gently in her face, turned to my sister, and took a long sip of real coffee, not the bitter kind I'd been swallowing for years. The hours that followed were a blur of caffeine, shaky hands, and a strange, hollow energy buzzing just under my skin. My sister, Lacey, sat across from me on the living room couch, legs crossed, sipping her drink like it was any other morning, except it wasn't. It was the first morning of something entirely different. She didn't say much at first, which I appreciated. She just let the silence breathe for once. No one had done that for me in years. With Darla, silence always had to be filled, with blame, with guilt, with reminders of how I used to be romantic, or didn't make her feel wanted anymore. But now, the silence was mine. I told Lacey everything. From the first little red flags I ignored to the full unraveling of the last few weeks. The deleted messages. The dinner reservations that didn't match her stories. The way she started wearing perfume again. Not for me, but for someone else. I even showed her the photo. Lacey didn't flinch. She just nodded like she had seen it coming. "She's been cheating on you emotionally for years, Kurt." The physical part just caught up. I hated how right she was. I hated that everyone else saw what I refused to believe. I used to tell myself that all couples drift, that things ebb and flow. But there's a difference between drifting and disappearing. Darla had already left. Her body just hadn't caught up yet. Around noon, I heard the chime from the doorbell camera. I picked up my phone, already guessing who it would be. And there she was, Darla, standing on the porch again, but this time with something in her hand. I zoomed in. It was a folder. The thick one. Lacey leaned over. "Is that what I think it is?" I nodded slowly. She brought paperwork. A minute later, my phone buzzed. A text from Darla. "Let's just get this over with. I'm not here to fight." I should have felt relieved. I should have felt some sense of victory. But instead, I felt strange. Like something didn't add up. This wasn't like her. Darla didn't give up control easily. She didn't surrender without a speech, a guilt trip, or a teary-eyed apology designed to keep me orbiting around her chaos. But now she was offering peace. Quietly, against my better judgment, I opened the door. Just enough to see her, folder in hand, lips pressed into a neutral line. She didn't try to come in. She didn't ask how I was. She just held out the folder. I had my lawyer draft a separation agreement. No tricks. Just split assets and freedom. "I'll get my things when you're not here." I took the folder without a word. She started to turn away, but something made me ask, "Why now?" She paused, then turned back toward me, eyes narrowing like she wanted to be honest, but couldn't quite make herself vulnerable enough to do it properly. "Because I think he's getting cold feet," she said quietly. And I realized, you were never the weak one. Then she walked away. That sentence bounced around in my brain like a pinball. Not because it made me feel better, but because it proved how little she ever understood me. I wasn't weak for staying. I was loyal. I was hopeful. I was committed. And yes, maybe a little pathetic, but I wasn't weak. When I walked back inside, I opened the folder. Legalese. Signatures. A clean cut. But tucked inside the final page was a note, handwritten. It said, "If he leaves me, don't expect me to come crawling back. But I know you probably will." My hands shook. Not from sadness. From fury. I turned to Lacey and said, "She still thinks she has the last move." And just like that, I knew exactly what to do next. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that note longer than I want to admit. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Sharp curves, overly confident loops. Like every sentence she ever spoke was a performance. The message wasn't just arrogant. It was a trap. She hadn't accepted the end. She was baiting me into proving I hadn't either. She needed to believe I'd still be waiting in the background, quietly nursing my wounds, just in case her shiny new future lost its glow. But she miscalculated something crucial this time. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was done playing the role of the safety net. Lacey read the note too, and her eyebrows raised like she couldn't believe Darla still had the nerve. "She's trying to keep a string tied to your wrist, even while she walks away," she said. Cut it. She was right. That note wasn't closure. It was a breadcrumb, a lifeline tossed from someone who still believed she had control. I folded it up, dropped it in the sink, and turned on the garbage disposal. That sound, the grinding, tearing, metal-on-paper shriek, was the most satisfying thing I'd heard in weeks. I knew what I had to do next. That night, I called a realtor, not just to get the house listed, but to set up a showing the next morning. I wanted Darla to know that the chapter was being torn out, not bookmarked. I gathered every trace of her that hadn't already been boxed up. Her vanity mirror, her books stacked on the nightstand, her half-used perfume. All of it, gone. The house had to breathe again without her shadow clinging to the corners. And then came the part one hadn't planned for. The apology messages. They started rolling in just past midnight. First, a text. "I'm sorry if I sounded harsh earlier. This is hard on both of us." Then another, more cryptic. "I never meant to hurt you. You have no idea how confused I've been." And finally, at 1:04 a.m. "Please don't do anything drastic. Let's talk again before lawyers get involved." There it was, the flicker of doubt. Not about her choices, but about whether I would finally stop orbiting her. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed one of the showing flyers and slid it into the envelope that originally held her separation papers. I left it in her mailbox before dawn with a sticky note attached that simply read, "Change doesn't wait for permission." When she found it, I got no calls, no texts, just silence, which, from her, was louder than any scream. But the silence didn't last. The next morning, the doorbell rang while I was wiping down the kitchen counters. Through the window, I saw a car I didn't recognize. Sleek, silver, expensive. A man in a suit stood at the door. It wasn't her affair partner. It was someone else. He looked out of place, stiff and impatient, holding a manila envelope like it was burning a hole in his hand. I opened the door cautiously. "Curtis Weller?" I nodded. He handed me the envelope and said, "This was left for you." She asked me to deliver it in person. Before I could ask anything else, he walked off. I stood there frozen, the envelope heavy in my hands. Inside was a letter. Not from Darla. From him. I stood by the front door for a long time, envelope in hand, unsure whether I should open it or burn it. It wasn't addressed formally, just my first name scribbled on the front in rushed handwriting. No return address, no explanation, and it wasn't Darla's handwriting. It was his. The man she laughed with over cocktails while I was changing the locks. The man with the polished smile and the designer watch, the kind of guy who probably thought loyalty was just a flaw reserved for small men like me. Part of me didn't want to read it. What good could come from hearing his side? I already knew who he was. A married executive, twice divorced, childless by choice, working out of some tech firm with an office downtown and an ego that probably had its own LinkedIn page. I didn't need his pity. I didn't need his version of the truth. But I also couldn't ignore it. I sat down at the kitchen table, hands shaking just slightly, and pulled out the single sheet of paper. No greeting, no apology, just a straight shot of cold honesty that made my chest tighten with every line. "I know what she told you, and I know what she didn't. You deserve to know more than what's been twisted in text messages and half-truths. She told me you were weak. She said you wouldn't fight back, that you'd roll over because you were emotionally flatlined. But after last week, I realized something. You're not weak. You're the one who still had something to lose." My jaw clenched. I kept reading. I ended it. Not because she lied, though she did constantly, but because she wasn't just using me to escape you. She was using both of us to prove to herself that she still had power over someone. I thought I was clever, stepping in as her secret. But I see now I was just a placeholder for something she lost a long time ago. There was a pause in the paragraph, as if he'd hesitated in writing it. "You were never the fool, Curtis. You were the decoy in a game she'd already decided she was going to win. I'm writing this because you didn't throw a tantrum. You didn't chase. You didn't threaten me. That told me everything. I've met fragile men before. You're not one of them. You're just quiet. And that scares her more than anything." I dropped the letter on the table and sat back, staring at the ceiling. It didn't feel like justice. It didn't feel like closure. But it felt like clarity. Everything I suspected, everything I doubted, everything I questioned in those sleepless nights. It was real. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the way she twisted guilt around my neck like a scarf. It wasn't in my head. And he, of all people, had just confirmed it. I thought about texting her, about asking why she let him see the version of me she invented. But no, that would have given her the last word. And I was finally done handing her that privilege. Instead, I picked up the letter and slid it into the shredder. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. I knew who I was now. And I knew who she was too. Just as I unplugged the shredder, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Check your email. You'll want to see this." I hesitated, and then I opened it. I stared at the screen, heart pounding louder than I cared to admit. My hands hovered over the keyboard, hesitant but compelled. I didn't recognize the number the text came from, but it wasn't random. The message was too specific, too targeted. "Check your email. You'll want to see this." Who sends something like that unless they know exactly how deep the rabbit hole goes? I opened my laptop and logged into my inbox. At the top was a new message with no subject line. sent from a burner-looking Gmail address. No greeting, no signature, just a single line of text and an attachment. If you ever doubted what she was capable of, here's your answer. Against my better judgment, I downloaded the file. It was a video, shaky, clearly recorded on a phone, vertical frame. I hit play. What unfolded wasn't graphic in the way I expected. It was worse. It was intimate in a way that felt violating to witness, even though it concerned me directly. Darla was sitting in a booth at what looked like a lounge or hotel bar, legs crossed, swirling a drink in her hand. Across from her sat a different man. Not the one she'd been seeing. Someone older, balding slightly, wearing a wedding ring. Her smile was effortless, the one she used when she wanted to appear both disinterested and irresistible. She leaned in and said, clear as day. He still thinks I'm confused. That's the beauty of it. I can blow up his entire life and he'll probably still ask if we can fix it. She laughed. The man across from her laughed. They clinked glasses. Then she added with a smirk, once the house is in my name, I won't need to play nice anymore. My breath caught. The rest of the video was short, just more casual conversation, more of her pretending she was some kind of mastermind. But it was enough. It was enough to burn down every last bit of guilt I had for finally walking away. I sat there stunned. It wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about another man. It was about strategy. She had orchestrated a plan behind my back, smiling in my face the entire time, and I had let her. Not because I was stupid, but because I believed in who she used to be. And she used that belief against me like a weapon. I forwarded the video to my lawyer with a single line. Use this. Then I grabbed the manila folder she'd given me, the one with the clean-cut separation agreement, and tossed it into the trash. This wasn't going to be clean. Not anymore. If she wanted a game, she was about to play one with someone who finally knew the rules. Just as I sat back down, another message popped up on my phone. Unknown number. There's more if you want it. I stared at the screen, unsure if I was grateful or horrified. I had no idea who this person was, how they got this footage, or why they were feeding it to me now. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the only one Darla had underestimated. Someone else out there wanted me to see her for who she really was. And they weren't done yet. I texted back 2 words. Send everything. The next 24 hours unfolded like a movie I didn't realize I was starring in. The anonymous contact kept their word. One by one, more files arrived. Emails, screenshots, a voice recording of Darla discussing how she'd stage a breakdown if things didn't go her way in court. It was clear now. She hadn't just cheated on me emotionally or physically. She had been plotting a full-scale extraction of my life. The house, the accounts, my reputation. But she forgot something important. When you push a quiet man too far, he doesn't erupt. He dismantles. With the evidence in hand, my lawyer moved fast. The judge granted an emergency motion that blocked the transfer of ownership on the house. We froze joint assets, initiated discovery, and submitted everything from the anonymous source as part of the case. I never saw Darla in court. She declined to appear, citing stress. But I saw the look on her attorney's face when the video played. That was enough. Within 2 weeks, she agreed to walk away with nothing. No alimony, no property, no threats, just silence. The best part? I never had to humiliate her. I never went public, never exposed her online, never stooped to the drama she probably expected. I simply let the truth speak for itself. Quietly, clearly, permanently. Once the legal dust settled, I sold the house. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need rooms full of ghosts. I bought a smaller place a few towns over, near the lake where I used to fish as a kid. The air is cleaner here. The nights are quieter. And for the first time in years, I'm not waiting for the sound of a key turning in the door. I've started writing again. Not these confessions, but stories. Fiction. Maybe one day I'll write this all down and pretend it never happened to me. Or maybe I won't. Maybe healing doesn't need an audience. What I do know is this. Darla was right about one thing. I was emotionally flatlined. But not because I was weak. Because I was surviving in a space where love had been replaced with control. And now, I'm breathing again. Thank you to whoever sent those files. You saved more than a case, you saved me from losing myself completely. And to anyone watching this, if someone ever tries to turn your loyalty into a leash, let go. You're not required to set yourself on fire to keep their lies warm. That's the end of my story. What moment shocked you the most? Was it the note, the video, or her final collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every one. And if you've ever walked away from someone who thought you never would, tell us how it happened. You're on Reddit Confessions, where the truth finally gets the last word.